Well, welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. We are going to go ahead and get started to honor your time. We are here tonight to discuss all things related to going to college abroad and taking a gap year possibly, and or taking a gap year. But we're really excited to be with you. This is a joint effort between CUSD-Futureology and Global College Advisors. More on that to come, but let's go ahead and move into some housekeeping items. If you see, first of all, this hyperlink on the screen at any point, that means that there is going to be a hyperlinked resource for you on the slides when we send you a copy of the slides. And I have the link ready to go, so you'll get a copy of the slides at the end of tonight. So just know that there is a linked resource for you on that page. Secondly, we ask you to use the Q&A function if you do have a question. The chat can get a little congested, and it would help us stay organized if you do put your questions in the Q&A. That'll allow us to get to your questions more efficiently. And then finally, this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel as always. So if you do have to excuse yourself early, if you have somewhere to be, that's totally fine. As always, our webinars will always be available to you on our YouTube channel, and it will be posted to our channel by the end of this week. And with that, let's go ahead and move on with some introductions. My name is Bing Nguyen, and I am a futurology counselor at Elisa Niguel High School, and I am a part of the futurology team. As many of you might already know, we are the district's college and career counseling program. So we deliver college and career counseling programming at every single high school site in the district, including Cal Prep and Union High School, which we're so proud of. But there are 7 counselors to serve you and your students in the district, and we provide one-on-one appointments, webinars, workshops, classroom lessons. We're all credentialed school counselors. We are data-driven. Everything we do is based on the needs of this school district. And we are experienced college admissions readers and have expertise in college admissions. So for tonight, your presenters will be me, right? So I'm representing CUSD Futurology, but we do have a very special guest presenter that you'll be hearing from shortly. And we have Cornelia Fuertes, and I apologize if I said that incorrectly, and you can correct me. But Cornelia is with Global College Advisors, and she works with students in seeking out study abroad opportunities, right? So we couldn't think of a better expert to bring to the table and to share their expertise with you tonight than somebody like Cornelia. So we're very excited to hear from her and all the amazing things that she has to say about studying abroad. So this is our agenda for tonight. This is what we'll be covering, okay? So we're going to talk about college abroad. We're going to talk about why and how one might go about pursuing an education abroad. We're going to talk more things college abroad, right? The details, tuition, housing, student support systems. What does it look like to actually be overseas possibly, right, for college? We're going to talk about how to make that happen. And then we're going to talk about gap year. So this is kind of a 2-part presentation. So first up is college abroad, and then the second half will be about taking a gap year. So 2 separate things, okay? But with that, I'm going to pass this off to Cornelia to get us started.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm really excited about having the opportunity to share with you what college abroad is all about, especially in times where US college education becomes more and more expensive every year. I'm very passionate about letting students and families know that there are other, more affordable ways to get an excellent and high-level college education. The students I work with usually apply to a mix of universities in the US as well as abroad. And once they get their admission offers in, they can choose a college option that's not only the best for them academically, but also makes sense financially. I'm also personally invested in the topic of college abroad since 2 of my 3 children chose to study in Europe. My oldest son got a master's degree in Berlin, and my youngest son is in the middle of his undergraduate degree in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. But you're here to find out about how you can make college abroad happen. So let's start by looking at the different options you have when you decide to go to college abroad. One option you might be familiar with is a study abroad semester or a year abroad that is organized by the college that a student is attending in the United States. Going with this study abroad version, you will remain part of your American university while you study abroad. and you will continue to pay the US university tuition fees. You can also choose a gap year option that allows you to get college credit for your time abroad. There are some programs out there where you can even gain admission through the gap year provider to specific US universities and seamlessly continue with your education at these colleges after your gap year. But Bea will speak more about the gap year part, so I leave that to her. Another way to experience college abroad is doing a dual degree. This option will allow you to get a degree from two universities that partner with each other. You will study 2 years at a partner, study 2 years at a partner university abroad, and then you finish your degree at the university in the US. An example for dual degree options are, for example, the 2 dual degrees that are offered by UC Berkeley. One is with Sciences Po in France, and another one is with the University of Hong Kong. Now, the last option on this slide is the one we will be talking about tonight. It's going abroad for a complete undergraduate degree. And that means you will be applying directly to universities overseas and not through any study program that a US university organizes. Now, all these options mentioned here, they differ in terms of cost, the planning process, organization, and also in terms of how you will end up immersing yourself into a foreign culture and language. So your choice will impact your overall experience later on. In the following slides, we will discuss getting a bachelor's degree abroad and what this entails. Now, first of all, why should you consider getting a college degree abroad? Well, there are many compelling reasons for it, and I have listed 5 here. First of all, it is so much more affordable than going to college here in the United States. There was an article in the New York Times just recently with the headline, "Colleges will soon charge $100,000 a year." That's unbelievable, right? Even though many families won't pay this sticker price, college has become quite expensive over the years, and we all know that. Therefore, the opportunity to get an excellent and internationally accredited bachelor's degree without incurring student debt is definitely worth considering. Secondly, you can save time by doing your undergraduate degree abroad. Many countries in the European Union, the UK, and also Australia, for example, they all have 3-year undergraduate degree programs versus the 4-year bachelor programs that we know about here in the United States. There are exceptions, like universities in Spain, Japan, or Ireland. There, the bachelors take all 4 years. A third factor that speaks for college abroad is especially great for students who already know exactly what they would like to study. In most of Europe and the UK, you apply for a specific program or major, so to say, and that's called the direct subject entry or direct entry programs. So if you would like to study architecture, law, engineering, or history, you will start having classes in your chosen subject from the very start. And that means also that history or foreign language majors, for example, won't have to take any math classes anymore. And science majors, on the other hand, won't have to worry about any social science courses anymore. Now, a fourth reason college abroad is so attractive is that it makes you stand out in the global job market. Getting a bachelor's degree abroad is quite impressive in itself. However, employers these days stress how important it is for them to have employees who are critical thinkers, have a strong work ethic, are responsible, resilient, and versed in cross-cultural communication. Studying abroad helps you acquire all these skills and also trains you to adapt to new situations more easily, take on challenges, and become a real problem solver. Now that brings us to our last point here. English is all you need, and that is really true. You don't need to have any prior foreign language skills if you want to go to college abroad. In fact, if you speak English, you have so many choices at universities abroad, since many countries, and specifically all countries within the European Union, offer hundreds of programs that are all taught entirely in English. So while you might want to learn the language of your host country while you're there, it's not a requirement for you to speak a country's language when you apply for an international bachelor's degree abroad. On the next slide, we will explore the different options for pursuing your undergraduate degree abroad. So there are different ways that you can make getting a college degree abroad a reality. Option one is that you choose to study at a branch campus of a US college and get a college degree from this particular US university, but outside of the United States. So you study outside of the United States. One such university is, for example, St. Louis University in Missouri, that has a branch campus in Madrid, where you can do a fully 4-year bachelor's degree in Madrid. Now, another option is choosing a completely independent American college abroad that offers a 4-year American liberal arts education. And again, you are getting an American education, but this time at an independent American college that is not affiliated with a university in the United States. Examples of such independent universities are the American University of Paris or John Cabot University in Rome. Option 3 is the option we will discuss more in depth tonight, which is getting an undergraduate degree at an international university. Like, for example, the University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands, which, by the way, offers 24 undergraduate majors that are completely taught in English. Next slide, please. So on this slide, you can see a few examples of tuition fees for international students at universities abroad. I think this really helps to put things a little bit more into perspective when we talk about college cost. And what you see here is tuition fees only. Housing and living costs are not mentioned here. I want to point out that these tuition fees pertain to public universities in these countries. All these countries have, of course, also private universities that make also for good college choices there as well. However, tuition fees at private universities can be much higher. But in comparison to private tuition at US colleges, it is still pretty affordable, I would say. Just to give you an idea, tuition fees at private universities in Europe can run anywhere from 9,000 euros to 25 euros a year. And remember that a bachelor's degree is often only 3 years long. For comparison, I listed some tuition fees for the UCs here in California and also for USC and for universities in the UK at the bottom of the slide, just to kind of get an idea, what the difference is basically. So when we look, no, actually, can you go back? Sorry. Because I wanted to say a little bit more about the tuition fees, because you do see there is a tuition fee range on some of those little price tags there. For the Netherlands, for example, it goes from 6,000 euros to 15,000 euros, for example. The reason for this is that depending on the university and also the city, you will find a different tuition fee. Universities in main cities of a country are often more expensive. In some countries other than the Netherlands, the range can also depend on what major you're choosing. That's, for example, the case for Australia and Ireland, where degrees in the sciences tend to be a bit more expensive. Now, in the case of Germany, there is generally no tuition fee for anyone attending public universities, including international students. The only exception is one state in Germany that decided to charge international students 3,000 euros per year. And again, remember, it's a 3-year bachelor. So that's still pretty good. Next slide, please now. So if you consider universities in Europe, it also makes sense to understand their academic structure better. While there can be slight differences in the academic structure depending on the country, overall, an undergraduate degree at a European public university generally takes 3 years to complete. There are some exceptions, like I mentioned earlier. Countries like Ireland or Spain have a 4-year bachelor's degree. And then a master's program usually takes 1 to 2 years, and that depends on the country and on the major. Considering the curriculum, at European universities, students explore their major much more in depth and focus more on a specialization in their major than US colleges do. Therefore, you won't find any general ed requirements, and the direct subject entry allows you to start your specific major from the very beginning on. That's also why a professional degree like medicine and law can be done in about 6 years, since you start studying medicine from day one. It's important to mention here that there are very few universities in Europe that offer a liberal arts education. The Netherlands is one of the very few countries in Europe that actually has a number of small liberal arts and science colleges. Other than that, you find just a couple of liberal arts study programs within bigger universities. But in that sense, the Netherlands are really special because they actually have some small liberal arts and science colleges, if that is something that interests you. Now let's talk about the teaching and learning style at European public universities. It's definitely much more traditional with a combination of lectures and seminars. And it also has a strong emphasis on independent study. There's also no mandatory attendance for lectures, and you often find fewer opportunities for student collaboration and classroom discussion. And again, remember, this all pertains to public universities in Europe. Now, good to know is also that the assessment methods differ from what we are used to at US colleges. Instead of continuous assessments throughout the semester and the year, you will find that often one final exam at the end of a semester more or less determines your grade. Again, there are also exceptions to the rule here, with the Netherlands in the forefront, the Netherlands in particular, have a much more modern approach to higher education. Next slide, please. If college abroad has caught your interest, I would like to point out a few important differences between college in the US versus abroad, specifically in Europe. There are many more differences than I have listed here, and some we have already touched on during the presentation and on the previous slide, actually. But these 3 here, I think, are very important for students and families to understand before they set their heart on college abroad. So at European universities, independence is very, very highly valued. You are considered and treated as an adult, and you are expected to behave like one too. And that is a degree of independence that is often very new for many US students. At first, this sounds great, but this freedom and independence also comes with great responsibilities. As I mentioned earlier, at big public universities, attendance is often not required. So you're on your own to get yourself organized and motivated and study on your own. You need to be also really self-disciplined to plan your study time into all the free time that you seemingly have. Now, in regards to student support, you can find academic writing centers, tutoring, and career centers. Basically, you can find everything that you find at a US college as well. So you can find that at most colleges abroad. However, you need to be the one to show initiative and ask for what you want and need. So there is less reaching out to you from the university side. And that also applies to emotional and mental health support. It's all there, There are mental health advisors, peer advisors, and psychologists there. But again, you need to reach out and you need to speak up for yourself and for your needs. Housing is the third component that I want you guys to understand. Here in the US, we are used to having colleges provide a housing option on campus, but this is quite differently in Europe typically. You will find that most European universities are city campuses, and they have their buildings scattered throughout the city, perhaps a little bit similar to NYU. So housing is generally not organized by the university. Students have to find that on their own. However, universities generally help international students with recommendations and connect them with student organizations that organize housing. Also, here are exceptions with the UK and private universities. They often also provide options for on-campus housing. So, who is a good candidate for college abroad? First, before we even get into a student's personality, it's important that a student knows what they like to study. If you remember, the direct subject entry requires a student to apply to a specific major. So knowing what exactly you want to study is really helpful. Secondly, it's very important that a student is excited about immersing themselves into a new culture, most likely a new lifestyle, and that they know that college abroad means much more than just getting a degree abroad. It's really about also learning about other people, traditions, and cultural habits. Also, we might not want to forget, you have to learn how to deal with the daily challenges of living by yourself, but with the added component of living in a foreign country. But there are some personality traits that for sure will make it easier to integrate into a new culture and life far away from home, and some of those you see on the slide. As a student considering college abroad, it really helps if you are proactive, self-disciplined, and responsible. After all, you'll be far away from home and need to get yourself to school, make personal and academic decisions all by yourself in a foreign country. You also want to be a self-advocate. You know what you need and you ask for it. You don't give up until you get help or get an answer. So let's take a look at how you can make it all happen. So you have decided that college abroad is for you. What do you need to do to make it happen? First, what do universities overseas require? It's hard to make a general statement here, but you will see that all universities require you to have a high school diploma that shows that you have finished your secondary education. You will also realize that your GPA is one of your most important components in the application process. Some countries have very specific requirements. In general, however, the SAT and the ACT are less asked for by public universities unless you apply in the UK. On the other hand, some countries have very specific AP requirements. For example, applying to a study program at a research university in the Netherlands or Germany will require you to show 4 APs with passing grades. Overall, however, applying to public universities in Europe is usually pretty straightforward. You don't need essays, no letters of recommendation, or a list of extracurriculars and so forth. The admission process at these public universities is generally not holistic, but rather academic, and that's why a high GPA and rigorous classes are very important. Now, in terms of the actual application process, you will find that it's not very common for European countries to have a centralized application system. Applications are all handled by universities individually. The UK is one of very few countries here with something slightly similar to the Common App, which is the UCAS platform. And France has a platform specifically for international students called Campus France, which lets you apply to 3 study programs at universities simultaneously. Other than that, you need to apply at each university separately. And that means you usually create an online account on the university platform, indicate the study program you're applying for, and then upload all your documents. These documents typically include your transcripts, a resume, passport, and a high school diploma if you have it. And that's it usually, unless you're applying to universities in the UK and some other public universities in Europe who have a few more requirements, like, like a personal statement, for example, for the UK. But generally, all the European public universities are pretty straightforward and don't need any of that stuff. Now, regarding timelines, when should you start preparing? Your junior year should be the year you start your research. And if you can, or if you know earlier already that you want to go abroad for college, then ideally you would map out your academic courses so that they will fulfill possible later requirements for your major later on. So for example, have your math sequence lined up so that you end up with AP Calculus if you are a science major. But definitely during junior year, research countries, universities, and majors related to your interest. In senior year, well, that is the time to apply. That's when many application portals also open up in Europe, like the UCAS for the UK, and also individual universities open their portals in the Netherlands, Ireland, and France, for example. However, in many countries, application portals don't open until much, much later, often just months before the start of the first semester, as is the case in Germany, the Czech Republic, and many universities in Spain also. Noteworthy is that universities in some countries, like Ireland, have rolling admission, and there you really should submit your application as soon as possible, since there's only a certain number for international students usually. So what happens after you got accepted? Usually you will get a conditional offer when you apply as a high school senior, especially at universities that open their application portals early. And then a conditional offer means that you will be accepted if you meet the particular conditions mentioned in your admissions offer. But you can also receive an unconditional offer if you have fulfilled all the admission requirements already. So let's say if you have passed the necessary AP exams already by junior year, you could potentially get admitted to a UK university or a university in the Netherlands way before you finish your senior year. Once you are officially accepted, the university will ask for a deposit to secure your spot for you. And for most universities, you must show you can pay for a year of study. And that means they want to see that you can pay the tuition fee and your living cost throughout the year. And then to make the transition easier for international students, all universities abroad offer special orientation days or an orientation week. And that's when you also, that's when they show you how to open a bank account and how to register at the municipality and lots of other things that you need for your life over there. It is also the time when you meet other international students who start with their studies at the same time as you. Next slide, please. So how can you prepare for college abroad? Well, there are many things you can do early on. It depends on what grade you are in high school, of course. First, if you are a freshman, you'll have much more time to research, look at the different countries, and compare universities and their programs. It also helps if you can explore and get to know a country by visiting it before you decide to study there. If you are a rising senior, I suggest that you use the summer to research the countries and universities that interest you and attend virtual sessions offered at these universities to have an opportunity to ask questions and connect to students in the major that you would like to study. As a rising senior, you should also concentrate on your grades, since, as we said before, a competitive GPA is quite important for applying to almost all public universities abroad. Secondly, explore your interests. That's something you can do throughout all your high school years. Figuring out what you like and enjoy doing will help you decide what you would like to study as a major. Again, think of the direct subject entry, right? You need to choose your specific major when you apply to these universities. And then let's talk about academic rigor. As part of your preparation for college abroad later on, you want to plan your high school courses carefully. You want to challenge yourself and add some rigor to your classes by choosing honors or AP classes. And remember, some universities abroad require you to have 4 AP courses with passing exam scores. Therefore, plan wisely so that by senior year you either have already taken all the AP courses you need for your college application abroad later on, or you will be able to take them in senior year. I also want to note here real quick that in regards to math, many public universities in Europe expect that students have reached a certain math level, even if the application is for a social science major. This also depends on the country and the university, but to play it safe, students should try to at least reach the pre-calculus level by the end of senior year. If you want to study business or math or anything in the natural sciences, then really try to get to at least AP Calculus. Now, while these courses might be required at some universities, I don't want anyone here to get discouraged, especially rising seniors. If you don't have the academic requirements in place just yet, there are some alternative ways to gain entry to universities abroad, like pathway and foundation year programs. Lastly, I want to urge all the students here on the call tonight to work on becoming more independent. You can start with simply preparing your own lunch, or help prepare meals for the family on the weekend. Start doing your own laundry, and also work on being a self-advocate in your personal and academic life. You want to figure out things on your own before you ask mom and dad to solve problems for you. And should you have the opportunity to travel to Europe, for example, take the lead in figuring out logistics, like getting train tickets, planning train routes, or understanding the subway system, and so on. And yes, that will be your ticket to college abroad. And I think this was my last slide regarding college abroad. I really hope I could give you a little taste of what going to college abroad might look like and what it takes to get there. And now I will hand it over to B for the gap year part of the presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Cornelia. Okay, so we are going to transition right now, right, from the idea of studying abroad and what Cornelia specifically mentioned, which was applying to an international university, right, for college. So we're going to transition from that to discussing another option that you might have after you graduate from high school, right? So not everybody's going to go directly to a domestic university or college when they graduate from high school, okay? So one option is obviously what Cornelia just mentioned, but another is taking a gap year. So show of hands in here, how many of you know what a gap year is or have ever heard of a gap year? So just give me a sense. I have a couple hands raised, so let me see who knows what a gap year is. Okay, so we have about maybe 10% of you in here who have an idea of what a gap year is. Okay, very good. Awesome. Thank you for participating in my informal survey. You can go ahead and lower your hands. I appreciate your participation in the matter. Let's talk about gap years, okay? The who, what, when, where, why, all the things. What I want to point out to you as we go along is all the photos that you see and all the photos that you saw for Cornelia's slides as well were taken by her and her travels, right, at international universities. And these photos are also going to be personalized. So the photos that you see as I move along are from a CUSD graduate's gap year, and more on her in a little bit. But every photo you're seeing is an actual graduate from our district. So I want you to be able to understand that this is an option for you if you want it, okay? So first of all, let's define what a gap year is. What is a gap year? In short, It's a semester or a year or a specific time frame, right? It doesn't have to be a year or a semester, but it's time that's typically taken after high school or sometimes after college, right before a student starts working, that is used to deepen your practical, professional, and personal awareness. That's kind of the definition that we'll use. But essentially, what a gap year is time for you to develop as a person, for you to develop independence, for you to develop individually, and for you to develop certain skills as well, right? So it's a time of growth. And that's what I want you to think of it as, is that a gap year is a time for you to grow and to learn in some way. Okay, so more on that to come, but let's talk about what you can do during a gap year. So during a gap year, you have many different options, okay? And these are just some examples of what a student can do during a gap year. It doesn't have to be academic, right? And oftentimes it's not academic. A gap year is a time for students to get out there and to volunteer, right? Maybe you want to get out there and help your community. Maybe you're taking a gap year domestically and you're staying within the country and helping out your immediate community or somewhere else in the United States, and you're learning about another part of our country, right? But a lot of students will take this opportunity to volunteer, and that can involve mission work as well with your church, right, or your religious group. So some students use it to get out there and to be of service to others. Another option is to intern. There are options out there for gap year programs that will allow students to actually intern and get experience, potentially in a field that they're interested in, right? To give them some more exposure to maybe a potential major that they want to pursue when they're in college. And another option would be to work. So you can also, as opposed to interning and possibly not getting paid, students might also utilize this time to work and pursue meaningful work that will help them develop certain skills that they can then take into college with them, okay? Some other options are experiential programs, which we'll talk more about, but there are actual formal gap year programs that you can apply for, that you would pay for, right? And sometimes get scholarships for, that package these experiences for you so that you don't have to create them yourself, right? They have an itinerary for you. They have different experiences that you can choose from, whether that's language immersion or service learning, right? Or working or interning. So experiential programs can be great for students who need a little bit more structure and who want a program to be able to do that for them. You can also pursue independent projects during a gap year. Maybe you have an Instagram account with 6,000 followers, right? And you want to spend a year growing your social media presence because it's something that you're very dedicated to. That could be a worthwhile gap year activity to pursue, is to grow an independent project, whether that's, your social media presence, or working on developing a skill that you've already begun developing in high school. Maybe you're a musician, maybe you're an artist, right? Maybe you love to crochet and want to start a small business in that time and take a break from school. And of course, a gap year is a great time to travel. And as Cornelia mentioned earlier, you can take advantage of a gap year and get abroad and study abroad and actually also get college credit during that time through some specific partner programs, which I'll mention towards the end in our resources. But of course, a gap year is a great time to travel and to see the world and to get out there and to maybe expand, your worldview above and beyond your immediate community, right? But as you can see, you have so many options. And this is a time for you to tailor your experience based on what you want and what you feel like you need to develop or want to learn more about, right? So many options for a gap year. So let's talk about some of the benefits of taking a gap year, okay? Because I think gap years are not as popular in the US as they are in, let's say, Europe, right? Or other parts of the country. It's much more common for students to graduate from their high school, right, abroad and take a gap year and take a year off to travel and to decompress a little bit before they pursue their higher education. But in the US, it's becoming more popular, but still not quite as popular. So let's talk about some reasons why it could help a student. First of all, a gap year is a great time for you to develop personal growth, right? It's kind of similar to studying it abroad in that you are developing independence, you're developing this ability to be resourceful and to adapt to your environment without the comforts of home around you. And it's a great time to build confidence, right? To build this awareness of what makes you tick in the world and what gives you energy and, what you love, right? This is a great time to explore things that might spark a passion in you. But certainly taking a gap year can be a great time for personal growth. Another benefit of taking a gap year is that it can broaden your worldview. And again, this is kind of what Cornelia was mentioning earlier, right? Is that taking a gap year, especially when it involves getting outside of your bubble a little bit, it will expose you to different cultures, different people, different experiences that will expand your worldview to make you just a better student when you go back to college, if you so choose, a better employer, right? When you enter the workforce, a better colleague, a better friend, everything, because you're getting exposed to all of these different perspectives and these different points of view, and that can only help you grow, right? And it's also a great time to learn a second language if you already don't know one, or a time for you to develop a second language that you already know and want to be more proficient in. Another benefit is a recharge. I don't know about those of you in here, you can raise your hand if you want, if you're a student, but if you're burnt out, let me know, right? Academically, if you're like, I have tried so hard in school and I'm tired, I already see some hands being raised in here, right? Thank you for participating in that. But I've met a lot of students who are like, you know what? I've worked really hard. I did really well in school and I need to recharge. I'm tired and I need to give myself some time for personal growth and some time to step away from the academic setting so that I can reassess what is important to me and come back to college reinvigorated and ready to go, right? So this is a really great time for you to reignite your enthusiasm for learning while you're out there in the world, growing in other ways and maturing so that you're ready to go back to school if you want to go back to college after your gap year, which is what most students do. And in fact, research says that most students, in fact, I saw a piece of research coming out of the Gap Year Association that said about 90% of students who take a gap year will enroll in college that following year after that gap year. So there, if you're afraid that, if you're a parent in here and you're afraid, wow, my student's going to drop off after a gap year and not go to college, if you're taking a meaningful gap year, research has indicated that students who take gap years and do something productive during that time, they enroll in college the year after, right? And they tend to enroll and do better academically after that time. So keep that in mind as well. Another benefit is that you're learning invaluable life skills. You have to be independent, right? You're out there in the world without your family, without your closest friends near you. You're making new friends. You're learning how to advocate for yourself. And you're learning very valuable life skills, like perhaps doing laundry for the first time on your own, cooking your own dinners, right? Looking for directions and navigating a city for the first time on your own. But you're learning skills that will be transferable not only in college, but also in life and in work, right? So the skills that you're developing can make you a really competitive college applicant, but also a really competitive applicant for a career, for a job, right? For a position in a certain field. So that's something that students tend to get out of gap years is those invaluable life skills that are transferable to work and school. And then it can help you, like I mentioned earlier, kind of clarify your goals a little bit. A gap year can give you time to refocus and to decompress a little bit from the pressure of high school and to really focus in on what sparks an interest in you genuinely, right? This is time to focus on yourself and on developing strengths and skills. And by taking that time for yourself, students are often able to define goals better. They're able to kind of see what it is that they want to do ultimately when they take this time off to think about themselves and dedicate some more time to developing themselves personally, right? And this time can also be a really great resume builder, right? This experience, gap years are an excellent thing to put on a resume because during that time you're doing something, right? You're not just sitting on the couch and watching TV all day. You're not going to the beach all day. That's not how students should spend a gap year if they want to be intentional about it. But it is a great way to develop your resume as well. And then finally, a gap year is a great time to leave a positive impact on a community. It could be your community, somewhere abroad. It could be somewhere domestically, but not close to home, like I mentioned earlier. But this is a time that you can leave a positive impact on your community, whether that's through AmeriCorps domestically, right? Whether it's through a mission for your church, for example, right? It's a way for students to give back and to leave a positive impact on their community before they go back to pursuing higher education. Okay. So let's talk about who is a good candidate for a gap year. Okay. This is very similar to what Cornelia was talking about earlier, as far as what makes a good candidate for studying abroad. A good candidate for a gap year is somebody who, number one, is independent, right? Who is not afraid to self-advocate and to be able to go out into the world and find their way, and be a little fearless in that regard, right? So those of you who have an independent spirit, who want to branch out, and who want to grow independently, this could be a great opportunity for you. And maybe you're not so independent right now, but it's definitely a skill that you want to develop. You can build that into a gap year that's a little bit more local, right? Maybe you're developing a gap year that's maybe a neighboring state away or something like that. But it could be a time for you to grow independence as well. Secondly, a good candidate for a gap year is somebody who is curious, who's open-minded, right? Who wants to learn about the world around them. You have to have a certain level of curiosity to be able to really take advantage of a gap year, because it requires a certain level of inquisition, of searching for meaning in the things that they're doing, and also being curious about other people and other cultures if you're thinking about going abroad, right? So those who are curious tend to have the most fruitful experiences, because they're willing to take in everything around them when they're participating in a gap year. And then finally, you want to be adaptable, okay? You want to be flexible. You need to be able to kind of just turn on a dime, right? You want to be able to just adapt to obstacles that come your way, because inevitably, especially if you're traveling, if you're away from home, you will face obstacles. And the students who tend to do the best are the ones who are flexible and who kind of are able to bend with those challenges and roll with those waves that come at them. Right. And again, all these pictures you're seeing are of a former graduate from San Clemente High School. Her name is Gabrielle. She was part of the class of 2022, and I worked with her very closely during her time in the district. And she took a gap year after she graduated from our district. And these are photos of her and her experiences. And she has a quote here on the screen for you. I won't read it in its entirety, but she developed skills. She developed confidence, right? She developed the ability to see other cultures and appreciate other cultures during her time, because she spent time in multiple countries during her gap year. And she actually took the route of participating in an experiential program for part of it, and then actually living with a host family in Guatemala for another part of it, right? So she had this kind of customized gap year experience where she did a kind of a group experiential program in Southeast Asia. And then for the second half of her gap year, she went down to South America and lived with the host family and did some service learning down there, right? But a great experience for her, and something that I want you to be able to see for yourself, right? So as you're planning for your gap year, there are some questions that you're going to want to ask yourself. And these are good things to ask yourself, because we have to really assess why you want to take a gap year and if it's going to be good for you. So I'm not going to read all of these in depth, right? You're going to have these slides afterwards, but these are questions that are intended to help you really dig deep to see if this is something that's going to work for you as a person. Things like, what am I curious about, right? What do I want to learn? Do I want to practice another language, right? How is this going to help me prepare for my future and align with my current career goals, if I know what those are? Do I want to self-design a plan for myself and plan everything out on my own? Or do I want to go with an experiential program that will kind of build everything for me so that I can just kind of show up and enjoy the experience without having to deal with the logistics of it all, right? And also you want to think about cost as well, okay? But some questions to ask, and I will provide you a link to a resource that will have all of these questions and more at the end of this presentation. So let's talk about gap year planning step by step. Okay, so step one is formulating a goal. It's very important for you to set goals before you do anything else. your gap year has to have intention behind it. If we're going to sit on the couch, if we're going to go to the beach and relax, that's not a gap year that's going to add a ton of value to your life, right? We want this gap year to be meaningful for you and to be a time of growth for you. So we have to set goals. And this is a time for you to self-reflect. This is a time for you to think about what you hope to achieve from that experience and where you might want to go. So these are things we have to start with before you can move on to the next step. It's what are my goals? What am I hoping to achieve? Where do I want to go? Okay. Secondly, we have to research your options because, again, you can do an experiential program where you're kind of paying for an organization to set up an experiential program for you for a semester or for a year. You can self-design so that you're planning your travel, you're planning what countries you might want to go to simply travel, right? Or you can do some kind of combination of both where half is an experiential program and half is self-designed, right? But this is a time for you to design what you want to do and start thinking about a timeline for that. Okay. And then thirdly, if you decide to do an experiential program, this is when you would apply for that program. And this is all going to happen generally senior year, right? The goal setting can happen anytime you want in high school. The research can actually happen anytime. And then the application process tends to happen more towards that senior year, okay, for the experiential programs, winter to summer of senior year, depending on the program. And then after you've done that, right, then we're looking for scholarships to help pay for these programs. And a lot of experiential programs that exist do have built-in scholarships that you can apply for to get assistance with paying for them. And you can also search for outside resources as well and outside scholarships. So let's talk about college applications as they relate to gap year planning. So those of you who are taking a gap year are probably planning on attending college afterwards. So senior year, you're going to apply to college, and then you're going to get accepted. Keep in mind that not all colleges will allow you to defer your acceptance for the time that you want to take, okay? For example, a lot of the UCs are not as friendly towards deferrals as maybe some private schools like Harvard. They love a gap year. They're like, we encourage you to do it. Go ahead and apply. We'll accept you, and you can apply for a deferral, right? So it depends on the college how accepting they are of the deferral process. More on that in a little bit. But senior year, you will apply to colleges. That's the best recommendation, best practice is to try to get into a college and then to defer that decision so that you can take that gap year, right? So you're going to go ahead and apply and check deferral policies at the colleges that you're interested in to make sure that they're at least deferral friendly, right, for your top colleges. And then what's going to happen is you're going to get your decisions back in the spring and you're going to accept a college of your choice, right? But we want to make sure first that their deferral process is going to be friendly to your gap year. So that involves talking to admissions, right? But ideally, you'll apply, you'll get into your college of choice, and then you will accept the offer and you will request a formal deferral. And that usually requires you to fill out a form and sometimes write a letter to express why you're requesting the deferral, which is why goal setting is so important. Because when you have a goal and a plan already in place, that makes it a much more compelling reason for the college to grant you the deferral, is if they think that you are actually going to utilize it to grow and to come back strong and to contribute to their university when you're ready to return, right? And then you're also going to defer any scholarships you might have gotten at that point. And then finally, you're going to, during your gap year, maintain contact with your school if you've been accepted. You're going to reapply for financial aid the fall of that gap year so that you get financial aid for the following school year. That's going to be very important. And you might have to reapply to some schools if they did not accept your deferral request, okay? And then, of course, after the gap year, you're going to update your resume with all of your amazing experiences. And then you're going to be able to embark on your next steps with a newfound confidence and experience from your travels and from your experience, whatever it may have been in that gap year, right? But this, just a quick timeline of college apps and gap year, okay? Now, finally, these are some resources for you. I'm going to share the presentation with you right now in the chat so that you can have it. That way you can have all the links resources with you when you leave tonight. But we have all sorts of resources for you on searching for colleges abroad, financial aid for going abroad, and some gap year resources for you as well. So please take a look at that when you have some time, but we are going to dedicate the last few minutes of tonight's webinar to Q&A to make sure that we're answering all of your questions. And Cornelia, I want to thank you again so much for being with us tonight and sharing your expertise with our families. We really appreciate, again, your knowledge and your passion for this. So thank you so much for being with us. And we'll go ahead and open it up to questions. You're welcome to type your questions in the Q&A. And we do have about 5 minutes to answer any remaining questions you have. And of course, if you don't have any questions, you're welcome to log off and enjoy your evening, and know that we'll be posting this webinar on our YouTube channel by the end of this week.
Thanks so much again for having me here. We really appreciate that. And I did answer already a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So don't be shy, everybody. We do have a few minutes. We will close out right at 6:30, but if you do have any questions, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll be happy to answer them. Looks like you did a very good job answering questions. Okay, here we go. We might have one. Let's see. If you happen to have a citizenship in another country, does it make it easier to apply?
Yeah, actually it does. If you are a dual citizen with a European country, it's not necessarily that it makes it maybe easier, but in terms of the deadlines that your application is due, that might be easier because you're not pressured by the international deadlines for international students. The other thing is sometimes you in terms of getting all the, for example, your passport, your visa, all these other bureaucratic parts of a application might be easier. And then specifically in terms of tuition fees, that's the big thing. If you are a dual citizen with a European country, you benefit from the European tuition fees and don't have to pay the fees that I have listed on the slide for international students. So in terms of the Netherlands, for example, now, that would mean instead of paying 8,000 to 15,000 a year, you would pay, for example, 2,500 a year. So that's a big difference, right? So if you can prove that you are a dual citizen with a European country. I hope that kind of answers the question.
Thank you. So another question, is gap year only for American universities? Can you have a gap year for studying abroad? So actually, so I guess part of the question would be, could a student apply to an international university and defer for a gap year, Cornelia? Do you find that that's common practice?
So at public universities, it's not an option.
Okay.
At least most public universities don't offer that because yeah, but the other version would be if you really want to go study abroad and want to do a gap year, then I would think you should apply to private universities because they are much more in tune with that. But public universities, it's kind of hard. I haven't heard that yet.
I guess the alternative is you could take your gap year and then apply to the international university after your gap year, right?
That's
So
correct. Exactly.
yeah.
Right. That of course, yeah. But it's not like how you can do it here in America that you apply and then you tell them, oh yeah, I really like that. I'm come next year. I want to do a gap year in between. That it's not. It's like because tuition fees are really low and the spaces are really there for the university for the students who want to take them. So if you don't want to take that space in that year, then open it up for someone else to take it, so to say.
Yeah. So another question is it possible to go to an international university after attending a junior college for 1 or 2 years domestically?
Yeah, absolutely. That is often even a suggestion for if you don't meet all the requirements right after high school, then that will really help you to get the requirements to actually enter into a university abroad. Now, in terms, if the question is rather, okay, can they apply classes from that community college to their degree abroad? No, that's not possible. So this will really just kind of qualify you to go to a university abroad, specifically public universities again. So with private university, it's a whole different thing. But public universities usually like the community college for a qualification, but they would not take any courses from that and apply that to the degree, for example.
Great. And the fees that you shared on screen for European countries, is that for residents or out of country?
That is for international students, so out of country. So those fees are not for residents. or let's say EU citizens. EU citizens pay differently.
Great. We have a lot of questions coming in. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is allow you to answer the Q&A, Cornelia. And in the interest of time, if you have some time to answer questions, I'm going to pass the hosting privileges over to my colleague, Ms. Kang, and I'm going to excuse myself from the webinar. But if you're happy, if you want to continue answering questions, Cornelia, I can just kind of leave you to answer questions if you'd like to do
Totally.
that.
Yeah. Okay,
great.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question. If I study 2 years abroad, do you think I would have issues transferring to a US university? Well, the question is, if you have studied 2 years abroad at a public university, that is, you're pretty close to achieving your bachelor degree, basically, right? And it's really an issue of the US university, what they would credit you for, what classes they will credit you for. And it depends also what major you want to go into at the US university. So it's really a case-by-case thing. So you would have to get in contact with the university in the US to really find out. But I think it should be possible and should not be a big problem, other than you might have to maybe take extra courses if your major is something completely different, for example. Especially you might have to take courses in the direction of general ed, for example, because that's obviously something that you wouldn't do at a European university. So here's a question. Do you have to be 18 to go to a university abroad? Yes, that is often the case. For many public universities, and especially they want you to be 18. However, there are programs in place by these countries actually to help you to start earlier. It's kind of like a transition program that is kind of organized by the university. But yeah, if you want, you can contact me with my email. I can put my email in the chat, and then you can send me your questions, and we can go a little bit deeper into that, because it's a little bit more expansive, the question. So my child has an IB diploma. Yes, the IB diploma is recognized, and sometimes that it's really helpful. It really shows rigor, depending on the country. So the Netherlands, for example, really likes the IB diploma, and generally, actually, the IB diploma, yes, is great to have. It depends on the final courses that a student did the exams in for the IB diploma, because some countries want to see certain courses in there. So that is a question, again, that pertains to the university within a specific country. So it's really, you will have to research that. Is it harder to get accepted in European university after a gap year? No, actually not necessarily, I would say, because really it might be maybe harder for you to get all the transcripts and everything from your high school. But if you have plans to do so, to do a gap year and then apply a year later to European university, then you obviously can get all this and have everything in place and have the documents from your high school signed, so you can apply the year after. In fact, many students in Europe take a gap year. It's even before the times of the gap year. Many students went traveling and exploring the world before they actually settled down to start their bachelor degree over there. So that shouldn't be a problem at all. If you're short on AP classes, would taking those classes at a community college count towards that? So this is, again, a question that depends on the country and the university, because some of the universities will accept your community college classes, while others will not. So in terms of Germany, for example, they really want you to have a certain amount of APs in place when you apply. If you don't have that, they suggest that you get that you go for 2 years to the community college and then apply, basically. But then other countries, there might be different ways to go about that. So again, I would urge you to write an email to me, and I can give you a more direct answer in that respect. What GPA is generally required for acceptance? It depends, again, as so many questions, I'm so sorry, but it really depends on the university. And within these public universities, there are often subjects that are restricted, which means there's only a certain amount of spaces available. And of course, there the GPA requirement is much higher than it would be for other classes that are just open for enrollment. So it really depends on the major that you want to study and at the university, because one major might be restricted at one university in the same country, but then you go to another